Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Irene, and since it's the end of the year, I thought it would be fun to kind of do a little book recap. So here are all the books that I read in 2023 summarized in a few words. Starting off with Too Late by Colleen Hoover. This is a really dark and thrilling book, but trigger warning for drugs, abuse, and toxic relationships. Next up, we have Reminders of Him, also by Colleen Hoover. This is a very redeeming story, not much else to say about it. Never Never, also by Colleen Hoover and Taryn Fisher. I feel like this could have been a really interesting read, but it was very confusing. Heartbones by Colleen Hoover. This was definitely written with Colleen Hoover's classic formula. However, it wasn't as captivating as some of her other books. It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. This was overhyped and I felt like the book was very predictable. It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover. This is definitely my kind of happy ending. Maybe Someday, also by Colleen Hoover. This was very cute young adult read. Maybe Not by Colleen Hoover. This is book 1.5 in this little mini series. This is a raunchy interlude to the next book, which is Maybe Now, also by Colleen Hoover. And this book was kind of the ending that these characters deserved. Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. This was a very Hallmark movie type book. And then I also read Things We Hide from the Light, and this was a Hallmark movie sequel, just some more action scenes. Carrie Soto Is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This was a very entertaining read and kind of a good break from the romance books that I was reading. When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi. I don't know how to say his name, but this was an autobiography of a egotistical neurosurgeon. I feel like some people really like this book, but for whatever reason, maybe because I'm a salty healthcare worker, I did not really enjoy it. And I thought that it was just him bragging about all of his accomplishments as a neurosurgeon, which are great because you literally do brain surgery, but also I didn't get any value out of it. If He Had Been With Me by Laura Nolan. The whole book was basically in the first 2 pages. Happy Place by Emily Henry. This is just a bookshelf book, and I understand that a lot of people really like Emily Henry and her books, but I feel like this was just a pretty cover. The book itself, I feel wasn't that great of a read. So next up, we kind of have a series, A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, and this was my favorite series of the year, and I would say that if you're not sure about fantasy, you should read this book or this series. Next in the series is A Court of Mist and Fury, and this was my favorite book of the year. This was the best classic romantasy book, so romance and fantasy mixed together, and if I could read this book for the first time again, I totally would. The third book in the series is A Court of Wings and Ruin, and this book I feel was kind of the climax of the overall arching story. And then the next one was A Court of Frost and Starlight, and this one was somewhat of a dull but necessary novella. And then the last one that has been published so far, because this is an ongoing series, A Court of Silver Flames. I feel in this book, Sarah J. Maas really demonstrates her ability to develop characters. Next up, going back to kind of romance stuff, we have Book Lovers, another Emily Henry book. So this one was very predictable, but also very witty and cute, and I like that part about it. Then we have The Wife Between Us by Greer Hendrick, and this one reminded me of The Last Mrs. Parrish, but kind of less thrilling. Then we have The Things We Leave Unfinished by Rebecca Yarros. So this was my first foray into Rebecca Yarros, and I feel this book was kind of slow until the end, where it was the biggest plot twist of the year. Then we have a little series. So the first one was Twisted Love by Anna Huang, and this was definitely a smut book. Then we have Twisted Games, which is the second book of the series, so smut book part 2, and then Twisted Hate, and then Twisted Games, which was smut book part 3, and then Twisted Lies, which was the conclusion to the smut book series. And then moving away from the smut books, we have The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave, and this one kind of felt like a very cliche, you don't know your husband type of story. And then we have The Last Letter by Rebecca Yarros. This was such a good book, but also for me, definitely won Heartbreak of the Year. It was very sad, and I read this while I was on a plane, and I was just bawling my eyes out, and it was so incredibly embarrassing. Then we have Every Summer After, which, as hinted by the title, was a great summer read and summer romance book. Then we're moving on to another series. This one is also by Sarah J. Maas, and this is the Throne of Glass series. So I chose to read Assassin's Blade first, which I feel like is definitely the way to read it, reading everything in chronological order of publication date. Beginning with the Assassin's Blade, we're just getting to know everyone, and we have these cute little stories. Then we have Throne of Glass, which is like getting to know our heroine, and I mean like girl hero, not the drug type of heroine. Then we have Crown of Midnight, which is like the beginning of the big scheme to just like save the world. Then we have Heir of Fire, which is where our heroine finally gets to fall in love. Then we have Queen of Shadow, which is where everything is like kind of finally starting to come together. Sarah J. Maas is so good at like pulling in different details from earlier in the series and then just like totally surprising you with it when it shows up in the book. Then we have Empire of Storms, so we're kind of like gearing up for this big war that's happening. And then Tower of Dawn, which kind of like introduces our second heroine, I guess. I read Tower of Dawn and Empire of Storm together like the same time and did like a tandem read, and I definitely think that this is the way to read the books, because I don't think I would have been able to power through a whole book of Tower of Dawn without the main character in it. And then the last book, Kingdom of Ash, this one is just the happy ending that we all needed. And then I feel like after like finishing the series, it was just really hard to like read other books, so I picked up this random book called Maggie Moves On, also by Lucy Score. This one was a low-key toxic relationship. Did not really like this book. I also picked up In the Likely Event by Rebecca Yarros. This felt like another military romance, because I feel like she has like this theme in all of her books, or all of the ones that I've read, where it's like always like some sort of military romance. So I was kind of over it. And then Chemistry of Love by Soraya Williams. This one was just one that I picked up from Amazon. It was very cringe in the beginning, but if you can get past the cringe part, it's actually a very cute book. And so there you have it. Those are all the books that I read this year. I think I read like over 40. If you're interested in more book content, let me know, because I love reading and I love discussing books, and sometimes I feel like I don't have enough people to talk about books with. So if you enjoyed the video, please be sure to give it a like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.